Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Happier Active. My name's Ellie, I'm the host. This week, I spoke to Brittany Nelson, who is an Ayurveda health counselor and a yogi. She is absolutely incredible, and one of the things that I really, really enjoyed about talking to her was how well she is able to clearly communicate what Ayurveda is, but also what it can do and how it can help as a mode of working. I think I do say this in the episode at the end as well to her, but so often when I talk to people who do some of these practices that are a bit more esoteric, even at the end of talking to them, I'm not always exactly clear on one of those things. So to be able to understand the how and the what and have that communicated so clearly is brilliant. And it's exactly why I love doing this podcast, because it's so amazing to get a better understanding of all of these different and amazing practices that can really help in various different ways. And she has loads of amazing work, so make sure to go and check her out. She does these monthly women's circles, which there's links to, and we talk about at the end, but I'm sure you know that sort of thing's right up my street, and I'm planning to join that at some point as well, because I love these female spaces where we all support each other. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll catch you next week. Thank you very much. There are many ways to find your path to better health and happiness, and what works is highly individualized. My philosophy is that most people are more likely to find that if they're active participants in their own journey. And this is a space to start exploring some of the rich and varied areas in which people practice, so you can start thinking about what resonates with you and discover new or different practices to either start or deepen your own health journey. And today I have Brittany Nelson, who's a yogi and an Ayurveda health counsellor. So welcome, and why don't you tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ellie, for having me. This is great. So I've been teaching yoga now for 10 years, and during that time, I really was kind of studying herbalism and different other forms of natural health and healing. And then I found Ayurveda school. So I went through a 2-year program, and I'm now an Ayurvedic health counselor. And so what that is this beautiful ancient system of medicine and or lifestyle practices rooted in India that's about 5,000 years old. And essentially, it can go from, clinical medicine all the way to self-care practices. And so I'm kind of a little bit more on the lifestyle and self-care realm in terms of Ayurvedic lifestyle. And Ayurveda means the science or the wisdom of life. And so with the training that I came into, with my own health journey and with my own interests, I really help women specifically with nervous system regulation, learning how to ground, how to eat and take herbs, and to live day to day with their natural cycles and the way that they were made, and the way where they live, and all sorts of things like that. So it's really this beautiful practice that's super nourishing, and there's so many tools in the Ayurvedic toolkit that I love to share with people.
Awesome. I love that. And so one of the things, I'm a health coach, and when I start with people, I say this on this a lot, but often people come and they expect me to give them like a nutrition plan or a fitness plan, and often the first thing is that like nervous system regulation, finding ways to calm everything down, to slow down. And it's really hard because in the kind of modern world there's such a focus on doing more.
Yes. And I would say in Ayurveda, the remedy is always the opposite. So for a lot of us who are doing a lot, or we have a lot on our plate, or we're really stressed, the opposite of that would be to be doing less and to be slowing down. And so I kind of thought the same when I just heard about Ayurveda. I thought it was a really strict, regimented dietary plan, and it had to be a certain way. And what I found is that you can make Ayurveda yours as a practitioner and as an individual. And so what often people need is more of those like slowing down tips. And maybe, after a first session, I would give them 1 or 2 recommendations that they can focus on that are really easy to incorporate into their life, because we're so ingrained to do more, but that's really just going to add more stress. And stress is, one of the leading causes of health issues, especially for women. So it's really, taking this Ayurvedic practice and then really allowing ourselves to slow down to the rhythms of nature is, I feel, the true medicine for most modern.
Yeah. And I guess, like, being in touch with, I know I saw on your social media when I was looking at it earlier that you've got a lot about like being in touch with nature and the seasons and stuff, but I guess that also goes for being in touch with our personal cycles and how all of that like links together.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Ayurveda is a lot about the study of nature cycles and honoring those cycles. And so our modern world is very linear, where we're supposed to be doing the same thing all year long. We're supposed to be productive, always on. Ayurveda is so intelligent because it uses nature's wisdom to say, hey, this time of year we actually want to slow down, or this time of year we do want to move forward, because we need to have that balance of rest and activity, right? That yin and yang. If we're just doing stuff all the time, we're just going to burn out, especially as women. And women specifically have that deeper connection to nature cycles and to lunar cycles. And so, maybe a man might be able to just kind of be the same every day and just do the same routine every single day. Women are not like that. We have these beautiful and dramatic cycles that when we honor those cycles, we can actually feel more balanced, so that when we rest, we rest. And then when we're on, we can really be on, and we can be creative and productive. And I feel like Ayurveda really supports those rhythms, because we get to know what those rhythms are through the elements.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really true. And it's interesting because I wonder if it's like partly because women are kind of, because we have the menstrual cycle, we're kind of almost like biologically set up to understand cycles better and kind of shifts in energy in a biological way, and that makes it easier to be more in touch with this stuff in the kind of nature way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you can't really understand something fully until you really experience it in your own body. And I feel like women have that ability to be more sensitive with the rhythms of nature and what's going on. Not that men don't experience that too, but I think women are just biologically made to really like feel it in their body, these cycles and changes.
Yeah, I guess you're experiencing it in a different way. So how, when people are at the beginning of all of this, how do you help them start identifying ways to bring some of these practices into their like day-to-day life? So that's quite a big question.
Yeah, that's great. So I would say, when I'm seeing somebody one-on-one, the first question is, what's your actual health goal here? Because there might be like 7 things going on with them. It could be a physical stuff, like physical, mental, emotional. In Ayurveda, we incorporate all of it, spiritual, all of it. And so I asked them, well, what's your actual goal here? What's your number one goal? If you could wave a magic wand and you could transform something in your health or in your life, what would that be? And that's going to help us get clear. In yoga, we call this our drishti, which is our gazing point, our focal point. So we need to have that focal point and that intention first of what they actually want. So from there, then we take it a step farther, and I'll ask them just, normal health assessment, like, what are they eating every day? What's their sleep like? What's their digestion like? Are they going to the bathroom every day? Just kind of these run-of-the-mill health questions. But also, what's their emotional health like? Do they feel anxious? Do they feel depressed? Do they feel inspired or not? So we go through physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. And then from there, as, working together, we'll come up with a dinacharya, which in Ayurveda, that's Sanskrit for a sacred daily routine. So it might be a plan of something they could do in the morning, or, some foods to incorporate or cut out, and then maybe something to help them wind down at night, maybe incorporating some herbs, some meditations. We start very, very slow, especially if they're feeling overwhelmed, which most modern women feel overwhelmed, right? So it's kind of this very gentle transformation of what they're doing every single day, because how we start our day, how we live our day is really setting the stage for our life and what we choose to put our attention on. So, yeah, it starts with that intention, right? It starts with that seed of intention of what they really need or want in their life. And then from there, we cultivate a plan. And so, even if they're having, some health stuff, but they really want to focus on their spiritual connection, or they really want to focus on an emotional thing, yes, it is tied to physical health as well. And there's things that we could do on the physical level, but ultimately we're going to focus on their goal.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because, and I think with this spiritual, something I've realized more through doing this podcast is how often when I'm talking to people, that when they've had their like really big transformational moment has often been when they've managed to tie their spiritual practices, whatever those are, into their work and into what they're doing. And then everything else kind of clicks into place because suddenly you can give like meaning to all sorts of things that wasn't there before. And it has this kind of huge knock-on effect on being able to, run your business better or your day-to-day life better, because it's all got like an intention or a purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like ultimately, so for those who are unaware, Ayurveda is the sister science to yoga. If you're familiar with yoga, you might be familiar with the word prana, which means life force, or chi, in Chinese medicine. And so we're trying to expand our life force. And a lot of us are depleted, or some folks are too lethargic, or they're doing too much, so we're trying to bring that balance. And so Ayurveda takes what we might practice on the yoga mat and really takes it in, to a whole different level, where we're looking at not just your movement and breath, but we're looking at what foods are you eating? What are you telling yourself in your mind every day? Do you have a slowing down practice every day and stuff like that? And so it's really just kind of taking this yogic philosophy, but expanding it to all facets of your life, where you really get to work with someone one-on-one. And I think that most women these days really just want to feel nourished and seen and held, because we don't have the support we used to. A lot of us are very isolated, or we just, too many responsibilities, not enough time for creativity or our dreams or rest. So this practice kind of shows you ways that you could do it in little bits that's actually going to work with your lifestyle. And so that's why I love it, because it doesn't have to be this big thing where you're doing a long hour-long meditation every day. It could just be really simple lifestyle tweaks you can make so that you feel more of that prana in your body, so you feel more of that restoration in your nervous system.
Yeah, I'm really so big on this stuff. And it just reminded me when you were saying it, one of the things that I did a while ago that has been like super transformational in my day was making my first coffee of the day. I don't have it till after I've dropped my daughter off at her childcare. Then I come in and I sit down and make sure I make it in a mug that I really like. And then I just sit down and drink it and don't do anything else. And I'm like really, I guess it's almost meditation, because I try and be like really present and really enjoy it and focus on it. And it's partly because I was trying to cut down caffeine, so it's like the one I get. But by really enjoying it and just taking that like 5 minutes to sit down and just only do that and not have my phone on, like not be working yet. And it's like such a small thing, but it means then when I go to my desk, I feel like refreshed. I've had that like, I call it the switching out of mum mode into Ellie mode again. But and it's like, so it creates like a really good gap between those two things. And it's such a small amount of time, but it means when I sit at my desk, I'm actually ready to go. I get on much quicker because I've just had that like pause. And it's one of those things that's so small, but it has made like a really big difference.
I love that. That is an Ayurvedic practice right there. That's actually a really big part of Ayurveda, is learning how to change the way we eat, and also just like giving ourselves, one of my Ayurveda teachers calls it the islands of serenity, so that when we're busy, we can carve a little bit of space before the activity or a transitional time, and then after the activity to like nourish ourselves and replenish ourselves. And I was actually rewatching one of the classes yesterday, and she was saying that when you change how you're eating, not what, but how you're eating, that can actually resolve 90% of digestive issues, because so many people, when they eat or drink something, they're working or watching TV or in the car, they're distracted. And when we digest our food, we need all of our attention on that digestion, because the digestion takes up so much energy. And so and also the digestive system is connected to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is that space where we can relax and receive and, down regulate. And so what you just described is a beautiful practice, right? It's like just that little tweak can completely change like the rest of your day. Just 5 minutes, right? And I would definitely, like, even what you just said, that's something I would recommend to someone, especially if they're busy, just to take that 5 minutes to themselves or 10 minutes or whatever it is. And, really enjoy that cup of coffee or their tea or whatever it is. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I think it's interesting. Earlier you mentioned about, being creative and having hobbies. And I think there's this increasing idea that all time has to be productive. So often if people have hobbies, people around them might start trying to push them to find ways to monetize those or make it into a side hustle. And there's very little time to just enjoy things for the sake of just doing them. And that's why I think when I'm making it something that I was going to be doing anyway, but that it's much easier for me to switch off that pressure of, I'm just doing this because there's no way of turning that into anything. It's just 5 minutes to really enjoy the thing that I was going to be doing anyway, but otherwise might be doing while I was reading emails or trying to tidy the kitchen at the same time or whatever. And it feels like an area with less pressure because I'm trying to get better at, doing art or other hobbies again. But it's hard because there's always like a bit of your head that's making you feel like that's not productive.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that I can't tell you how many years, just me, myself, how many years it's taken for me to learn how to slow down. Like before this, like 10 years ago, before that, I was working full time, kind of in the corporate grind. And I kind of changed my lifestyle where I had less in that realm and freelancing and stuff. And it took years for me to just learn how to be okay with not being as busy or not being as productive. And my head would tell me, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And man, it was loud. And it takes so much practice to learn how to drop from the head to the body, And another thing I'll say too is that, for those women out there, which is many of us, who can't justify or, we can't give ourselves 10 minutes to just drink our coffee because it's not productive. It's like, look at it this way. It actually is productive because what you're doing is you're bringing more prana into your body. That's going to give you more life force to do better work, whether it's, creative work or taking care of your kids or your, whatever it is. And so it actually is productive. And I feel like most entrepreneurs out there that are successful long-term, they usually have some sort of self-care practice, or maybe many. They get up really early and they go for a run, or, they do something to fill up their cup. And especially if you're a busy mom or something, it could feel really hard to do that. But just having those little moments it's almost like a reset button. It can really just restore your energy field so quickly. And that's a beautiful thing, right? That we don't have to do these really long silent meditations. We could just do these throughout our day whenever we need.
Yes. And I think it's, how do I want to say this? It's difficult because we can feel like, I guess if you're working and you're a parent and you're a partner, like I know that I'm a better mum and a better partner and a better at my job when I have these moments for myself. But even then, as soon as I get busy or stressed, they're often the first things that I start forgetting to do or cutting out, which kind of compounds the problem. So even though I know that, it's really hard to remember. Actually, when I've taken that 5 minutes or 10 minutes and done a bit of breathing as well, when I sit down at my desk, I'm going to get way more done because I'm going to be in a much better state of mind to do it. When I've taken that time to go for a walk after bedtime before I go and do my chores, I'm going to be much nicer company than afterwards because I've just had that bit of time outside, bit of time to myself. But as soon as you get overwhelmed, it can be really hard to remember those things because they feel like easy things to cut out where actually they're almost essential to getting back onto that kind of even keel again.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a real thing. And it's like, I think when you just have to give yourself grace. We're not going to be perfect at this every day, you know, and there's going to be days that are really stressful. And I feel like this is where I like to bring in plant medicine into the mix because it helps tell our bodies, it helps kind of inform our bodies how to relax, whether it's adaptogens, which are specific herbs that help our nervous system rebalance itself so we can handle more stress without really feeling a lot of symptoms as much. Or it could be like a gentle nervine, really working on the nerves. I think that if an individual does have a ton of stress and they just can't manage with trying to do these little meditations, like that feels overwhelming, that's when I bring in plants, because plants they're these really, I like to call them like gentle warriors. They're so gentle, yet really powerful when you stick with it. And the plants can kind of help communicate with ourselves directly in our body directly versus just us trying to be strict when we're really overwhelmed. So that's something that I like to bring into my practice is, I can't prescribe, I'm not a doctor, right? I can't prescribe anything or take any medications away, but I could say, hey, here's an herb that I think would be great for you. Ask your doctor, do some research, and just see, just give it a little time. And I know for myself, like plant medicine, herbs, etc., has been the number one thing in addition to just spending more time outside and learning how to slow down. And I think that that's something that everybody can do, right? They can, take a tea or capsules or a powder in their coffee or something. And over time, that's really going to help their bodies learn that everything is okay. So eventually, when, their body's on board first, and then eventually their mind can get on board with that. And I think that's what I love about Ayurveda is it's a 360-degree approach. It's not just one thing, just breath work or just herbs. It's, a combination of all sorts of things that work together so that over time you're going to feel like a different person, at least more resourced and really regulated.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm really big on whole approaches because I think often when people have got to the point where they realize that what they want is a coach or what they need is this kind of change, like you say, if they're really stressed, then that's going to affect their digestive system. If the kind of exercise they're doing is making them more stressed out, if, all these things like have to work together in order to, if what they're eating is not helping them sleep or all these things. And when you can kind of work on them all together in a holistic way, you see changes like much quicker because they're all coming together to make a kind of bigger impact rather than doing one thing at a time and thinking that they're not interlinked. Because we all know, like, when we're less stressed we sleep better and then we're more likely to get up and cook the food to eat better. We kind of know these things instinctively, but then we often try and work on them in discrete little individual packages.
Yeah, 100%. And when you're not resourced and you're tired and exhausted, it's so much easier to eat junk food or, sit in front of the TV and eat ice cream or whatever, which is just human, right? We've all done it. We all do it sometimes, and that's okay. But, it's like if this becomes a chronic thing and then you're just not seeing results, we take those baby steps to get us back toward health, one little step at a time. And I think with Ayurveda, if it's done in a really nourishing, gentle way, it can be that, which is that slow progress where you're going to feel some things immediately, but some things are going to take a lot more time, especially if you've had a chronic issue for a while. It's going to take time to feel different.
So when you're introducing the idea of things like plant medicine to people, how, because I guess for some people that's like quite a newer concept in terms of the way they would be used to working. So how do you talk to people about that?
Yeah, I think so. A couple different things. I just finished a small group program with a small group of ladies, and it was a lot of education. And so we did a lot of education in classes, and then we did our one-on-one session. My future offerings will be a little bit more focused on one-on-ones, but I kind of just educated them like, hey, like here's some info about the nervous system, and then here's something called adaptogens. And we really just dove into how it actually works in your body, how it's helpful, how it's generally safe, and then going over different plants. So the kind of this educational aspect, but then also what I find to be even more powerful is to develop an actual relationship with the plant itself. So we'll do things like plant meditations where, we'll just do a guided meditation with a specific herb and bringing it into their body and just seeing what their personal relationship to it is. Because although, herbs have their own properties and benefits, I do think that just like two people, every relationship between a plant and a person is going to be different and unique. And a plant might work really well for one person and not so great for another. And so I want them to feel that connection and not just take something because I say they should, right? I want them to feel, ooh, I actually feel drawn to this herb. Okay, let's look into that. And that's how I came into herbalism, and it really changed my life, is just, building that relationship with the plants. And, whether it's physically being with them in nature, or it's literally visualizing it, or just learning about the plant. I think that that's more of a feminine way, or rather an intuitive way to work with a plant medicine versus like, here, just take the supplement. And so I think that, when we establish that relationship to something, whatever it is, it has more potency to be beneficial and helpful for us.
Love that. Because I guess as well, then that means it's sort of, it's my whole thing is like empowering people to make decisions for themselves. And one of the things I think a lot of people are missing, which I guess comes back to a lot of this Ayurvedic stuff, is that people are really like out of touch with themselves and their cycles and with nature. And so learning how to do stuff and really noticing for yourself what's going to work rather than having someone tell you is so much more powerful for long-term change. But also because everyone's so different, you can have 3 different clients who on the face of it have the same problem, but it's going to be a different solution for each of them.
100%. Yeah. And I think like my business name is Earth Intuitive. So I want to empower women to be their own healers, right? I'm not their healer. I'm just a facilitator that helps share information that I've learned that has been passed down, and, facilitating some practices where they get that direct information for them. And so I think that when you're working with a holistic practitioner, I think it's so much more meaningful when they can really learn and empower themselves so that they won't need me in 5 years. Like they know what's up, and they can empower themselves to do these practices, or, help themselves. Not to say we don't need guidance. I think we all do. Like I have a naturopathic doctor I see, and I have an acupuncturist that I see.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just so much more empowering to know that, okay, if I have anxiety, I know what to do now. I'm not going to freak out, or, I feel empowered to resource myself. And then if I need further help, I can get further help. And I think that building those relationships with plants or with these practices or with your own body is such a great way to do that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think so often people, they want like an easy solution. It's something I've been wrestling with a lot recently, is like when you're on social media and there's a lot of people saying like, oh, here's like 3 easy steps to fix everything. And we kind of know that that's not true. But also like that takes the power away from people to figure out what works better for themselves. Like there are obviously some like baseline things, which I guess we've talked about a bit, you know, sleep more, eat better, be less stressed. But those are quite big, and how everyone does them is so different that like there aren't really like 3 easy steps that work for everyone. Otherwise, no one would be stressed out or like
Yeah,
any of these
exactly.
things.
Yeah, I think, and I do
um,
think, like, from a marketing perspective, people do that because most people do want a quick fix. And so that will get them in the door. And it's, you can do that in a way that's not manipulative, of course. Like, we don't want
yeah.
manipulative marketing, but I think that's what our culture has trained us to do, is to find these quick fixes. But then when you get through the door of a good holistic practitioner, and they'll be like, okay, now that you're here, let's tell you the real story. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, you know? So I'm guessing that's why people do that, and
Yeah.
I don't know, because I think, like, if you're saying, hey, here's this really long program and you're not going to feel better for months and months and months, it's like a lot of people wouldn't even sign up for it. So that's just a
Oh,
little aside topic.
so one of the things that I try and do is like, and I think it's kind of what you were saying at the beginning as well, there are like some easy things that you can do at the beginning that will make huge amounts of difference that everyone can kind of do. And then the kind of individual, like we all know, and you can share with people the benefits of meditation or putting those little 5-minute things in. And those are quite easy wins because they can make a huge difference. And that is pretty much applicable to anyone, because by the time they come, they're probably quite stressed. So there are these kind of small things that make quite big impacts early on. And then the more individualized, like the herbalist stuff. And I guess it is really interesting how these things like connect together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, like, a quick personal story. Years and years ago, I, had a lot of anxiety most of my life. And there was this herbalist who was hosting this free workshop on like 3 herbs for anxiety. And I attended. It was like in person at the time. And there was an herb she recommended that I've been working with since then. And it did change my life. Like, I really, within a couple weeks started sleeping better and I felt more regulated. But that was just the first step of my journey. There's so much more to come, and I just didn't know it. So it's like, I feel like these initial things we do can kind of just get us on the right path.
Yes. And when that initial click happens, then it makes you realize like, oh, a lot of this other stuff is going to be possible. You have to have that kind of initial, I guess, connection with the practice and with the person. And like you said, with that specific herb or whatever. And it might have been, someone else might have told you about it at a different time and you wouldn't have been ready to hear it. It's like all these things have to line up. And then suddenly you're like, oh, that worked. So now I can, the next thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, anything helps, right? And it's just, I think that what can happen though is, people are busy and stressed. And so they kind of like might be on the path and they fall off the path, and they're on the path and then they fall off the path. So, and that's normal. So I think this is where having that one-on-one support or a support group or whatever it is really going to help you stay on track, because it is easy to just let it all fly out the window. But then you're going to be faced with the same issues you started with, right? So it is a dedication, to be on this path, and it's not a quick fix. It's a long-term, big lifestyle shift, and so you have to really learn patience and hope and trust in this process as you go through it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I try and work on with people at the beginning of these journeys, and I'm sure it's really something that you have to a bit as well, talking of the kind of falling off, is like the getting out of that kind of all or nothing mindset that I think women are quite primed to do. And also I think it comes from like, it's really like more our generation, with the kind of way that diet culture has made us feel like it's got to be, you're either not doing anything or you're doing everything. But actually it's fine if you miss a day, whatever, then that doesn't mean you're never doing it again. You just, the next day, try and do it, or try and start figuring out if there's a pattern. Like if you're always missing the thing on a Monday, maybe we just make it a thing we don't do on Mondays, or, start to notice, like, be more in tune with what's working and what isn't and why.
Yeah. 100%. I think that can be helpful when you're working with someone, is like, hey, this isn't working for me. Let's do something else, or let's make this tweak. And it's like, sometimes that's all it takes to actually help you stay on track, or to like just work with your lifestyle a little bit. And, like even in Ayurveda school, we learned like it's so easy to give people 5 to 10 recommendations on the first call together, but that's just not realistic. And
Yeah.
people might want that. It feels valuable, but it's like, let's start slow, because there's a difference between, okay, I'm going to give up coffee, let's say, and then actually doing it. Those are two very different things. And it took me years to get off coffee personally. So yeah,
that's why
so
I'm down to my one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a long journey, but I think that, as long as you're on the journey, you're going to already feel better. Like, I can guarantee that.
Yeah. And I love, the other thing that I really love about when I was looking at your social media and some of what you've talked about today is like how in tune with nature it all is. Which is, it's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah. And I love Ayurveda so much. And I will say that it's akin, or like a, cousin to Chinese medicine, because they're both rooted in the elements, the 5 elements, 6 elements. And so the best way I like to describe Ayurveda is the study of the elements, really. Is everything is made up of earth or water, fire, air, usually a combination. And so it can go from the seasons, right? Where, springtime, like late spring, would be the season of, water and air. And that can be a specific dosha. I know a lot of people who don't know a ton about Ayurveda, they may know about the doshas. And so it's like, we're all made up of different elements, and we all have different archetypes. And, one person might have a really fiery constitution. Another person might have a really earthy, watery constitution. And so when we can study how the elements work in nature and how they work with each other, and then we study that in our own bodies, once you kind of understand that framework in Ayurveda, you don't need to understand it fully as a client, but it's really easy to figure out how to help people. So if they do have a really fiery constitution, what would be the opposite of that? And that's cooling and slowing down, right? So if you're really fiery and intense and fast, you want to bring in slowing down practices and cooling foods and practices. Like, there's a lot of fiery foods you can avoid, and more cooling foods you can incorporate, or just the season. Like, we're all in more of a fiery time in the summer, and incorporate some of those principles for everybody. And so it might sound complicated, but I find that that's the easiest way to look at it. It's just, Ayurveda really is the study of the elements and how they work together, and how we can offset any imbalances we have.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's a really interesting way of looking at stuff, because it doesn't feel, I guess some things can feel quite personal, whereas this is just like, oh, well, this is just like a thing, a fundamental way you're made up. And so then this is what like complements that or works with that to balance it out, rather than, I guess, to use the fire example, it could be seen as like an attack if it's about your like personality, where if it's like, no, it's just how you're made up. So these are some things we can do to like work with that better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not, it's not really an attack on who you are, like just in your body. It's more of like, how can we actually support this? Not that we're trying to fix it. We're just supporting it so that, like, for example, using the fiery example, that would be like in Ayurveda, that would be the Pitta dosha. Pitta, when imbalanced, they can become angry. They can have like acid reflux, like fiery digestive symptoms, loose stools. They could be really judgmental or be kind of like perfectionistic. And so those are things that are probably going to be irritating even to yourself, right? And maybe to other people. So we're not trying to shame that, but rather support it with like, you have this incredible fire about you. That's amazing. But let's balance it so that you're not experiencing too much fire with your symptoms or with your emotional symptoms or behaviors. So it kind of helps support the flame so that they can shine and be resourced at the same time without getting too big and too fiery and destroying things, right? Whether it's their health or just working with other people or whatever it is.
Yeah, so you can direct that kind of fire to the things that it needs to be and not have it like overwhelm you at the times when it might not be as helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. It's such a great way of looking at the world, and I can see the like, I don't know, for me it all makes a lot of sense because I kind of love nature and cycles, and I already try and balance my life through the seasons, and so this kind of really makes a lot of sense to me as a, you know, on a kind of fundamental level.
Love that.
So if people want to, when people kind of come to you to start working with you, where do you start with them?
Yeah, so there's a few different options, and right now my free resources are on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel called Earth Intuitive. There's a lot of yoga classes on there, and I'm still uploading yoga classes. They're about 20 to 30 minutes long, usually more gentle, some meditations, but I'm shifting a little bit more to doing more topics on Ayurveda. So for example, I have a digestion series that I'm just put out, and they're just like 10-minute videos explaining, you know, different ways to improve your digestion through Ayurveda. So
Amazing.
that's just a good way if you just want to explore more of what I do. You know, you can hop on there. It's all free. I also have a free grounding guide. It's all on my YouTube page. That's a good place to start. I do a lot on my Instagram as well. And then I'm also going to be launching very soon my 5-month program called Nourished, which is working one-on-one with me. So it's going to be one-on-one health counseling in addition to 2 pre-recorded educational classes that they'll receive every month. So this is kind of a longer package where if you really want to change your life and your health, and you really want that accountability support, and you want education so that you can carry these tools with you for a long time, that's going to be available. So that's going to be coming out pretty soon. And if people want to join now, I'm kind of offering them a little discount. So it's a good time to get in now.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that balance of having the like education that can be a bit more self-paced with the like one-on-one to troubleshoot stuff that people have tried on their own is such a good blend, because they can try stuff for themselves and then it kicks up that like empowerment side, but also with the support to troubleshoot it when it doesn't quite work the first time or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, you know, I think there's something called like information overwhelm or information overload in our day and age. And so I want to gradually give these people education. So like each month it'll unlock a couple classes. So that way they don't feel overwhelmed with all these classes. Like, so we're working together. That first month they'll get a couple classes they could go through. It's a little bit more relaxed. So that way they can stay focused on like, what are we really paying attention to this first month? And the next month it's something else. And I just feel like the slow and steady approach is the way to success. And oh, another thing I forgot to mention, I also am just starting this month, I'm offering monthly women's circles. And this is a really low cost way. Has nothing to do with Ayurveda, really. It's just a way to gather with women to share what's on your heart in a safe space, and, you know, just to do some grounding together. So I'm going to start doing that. The first one is next Monday, so I'm going to offer that every month as well. You know, just in case you don't really want to do a deeper dive, but you still want to work with me and have that community of women, I'm going to be starting that up.
Yeah, I actually saw that, and annoyingly I can't come to the first one, but I'm going to try and come to one because that looks like exactly my sort of thing.
Good. I'd love to have you. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think all these things are so great, and there's the community aspect of all of these paths are what are so powerful, because sometimes it's like seeing other people who are ahead of you in the journey is like just as powerful as well, because you kind of see where you can get to. And I guess people being more honest about, which is why I like these spaces, and what I like about podcasting is people tend to be more vulnerable about where they've had struggles, and not pretending like, oh yeah, I just found this thing and then it was easy. You know, everyone on this path, they're not straightforward for everyone, even the practitioners. And that's what I love about a lot of these like modalities, is that people are able to talk about that a bit more, and it's easier for people to see that path.
Yeah, and just to normalize that, like, all of us are human, and even if you're on like the most pristine health path, you could have something happen in your life that kind of throws you off center, and then you may have to kind of restart again. And like, that's just a part of the nature of life. And Ayurveda recognizes that we all have different cycles in our life, and what your life might look like, for example, like before you have a baby versus after, is going to be very different. So what you're going to need is very different, and what you can handle in a day is very different. So I think that the reason I work with all women is because I want to be able to relate to my clients in a very deep way. And I want to be able to offer them what they need. And I think that having that circle of women is so needed. And that's where I feel comfortable working in, is with women. And having those circles, whether it's a women's circle or just the one-on-one work, it's just so helpful to just have that support and accountability, etc. Even if you're going through a rough time and you don't want to do a bunch of practices, you still have that person to talk to and to support you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, and I think you're so good at like explaining this stuff in like a way, for people who don't know very much about it, which is really great, because often in these spaces, I know you see people talk about this stuff, they use a lot of words and they don't always explain very clearly, and I feel like you're a great communicator, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, this was wonderful, and I love talking about this stuff. I could do it all day long, so really appreciate you having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you.